I call the member for Jagga Jagga.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, this is a landmark piece of legislation that represents the most significant overhaul of Australia's environmental laws in a generation. It is overdue. After our environment was neglected, ignored and left to degrade by those opposite, it is work that Labor attempted in our last term but that we could not get opposition or Green support for in the Senate. And we are now meeting the commitment we made. And this is a commitment I certainly made to many of my constituents prior to the last election, that we would be bringing back new laws to protect the environment to this parliament. Our Labor government does understand how critical these laws are for our environment and the precious places and species we must protect, and for certainty for business and those looking to make necessary developments. Deputy Speaker, while this bill very clearly demonstrates the Labor government understands the need to protect our environment and pass these laws, I'm yet to be convinced that those opposite understand it. These are some of the questions on my mind right now. Will the Leader of the Opposition stand up for our environment? Will she demonstrate her party's newfound capacity to listen, to learn the hard lessons and reflect the Australia from which they have actually become disconnected? Will she listen to Graham Samuel, who she commissioned to do the report that these laws are based on, to Ken Henry or to the businesses urging her to support reform? Will the Greens political party finally join the government and pass these reforms to protect our environment? Or will they once again hold out for the perfect and scupper the good? Deputy Speaker, I want to pay tribute to the many individuals and groups who have campaigned hard for these reforms for many years, who have made and who continue to make informed contributions. These are the people who understand the importance of getting this done. I just hope that those opposite and the Greens political party do too. Deputy Speaker, this bill builds on the Albanese Labor government's broader agenda to protect and restore Australia's natural environment. And this is an agenda that stands in stark contrast to the inaction and neglect of those opposite. For nearly a decade, the Liberals failed to act on climate change, they ignored the warnings of scientists, and they left Australia without a credible plan to safeguard our environment. They stalled renewable investment, cut environmental programs and oversaw worsening biodiversity loss.
Sorry, member, what's your point?
The former coalition government. They've gone up under the current government.
No point of order. Proceed. Member for Jagga Jagga.
The member is clearly a little embarrassed about what is happening under his party at the moment. It seems unlikely. Sorry, do you have the call? It seems unlikely that they will learn from these mistakes of the past, reverse direction. In fact, it looks like his colleagues are walking away from net zero, which I understand is probably a shame for the member for Goldstein, but he does not currently have the numbers, it seems. Good luck to him in his efforts to get them. Deputy Speaker,
Goldstein, please.
Since 2022, our government has turned the page on that track record. We have passed strong laws to cut emissions and put Australia on the path to net zero by 2050, including strong 2035 reduction targets to get us there. We've committed to achieving 82% renewable energy by 2030, with more than 100 clean energy projects already underway. We've protected 95 million hectares of Australian land and ocean, an area almost the size of Germany, Italy and Norway combined. We've expanded marine parks around Macquarie Island and the Heard and McDonnell Islands, established Environment Information Australia, giving the public and business easier access to transparent environmental data. We've doubled funding for our national parks, including Kakadu and Uluru. Invested $1.3 billion to expand the Indigenous Ranger program, delivered $600 million to protect threatened species, and created the world's first nature repair market, unlocking private investment in environmental restoration. It is a strong record, but we know there is more to do, and that is why this bill is before the House. These reforms are the product of one of the most extensive consultation processes ever undertaken in the environmental policy space. And as I said before, I do want to pay tribute to the individuals, the environment groups, the business groups, the stakeholders who have all engaged constructively in that process. Minister Watt and the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water have conducted more than 100 meetings, forums and roundtables across the country. Of course, as I said, these reforms are built on the recommendations of the review conducted by Graham Samuel, a review commissioned by those opposite, by the now leader of the opposition, but which unfortunately they could not follow through on. It's taken a Labor government to get this bill before the House. Under Labor, we're delivering change that review called for: modern, balanced and enforceable national environmental laws. We're delivering reforms that reflect the best available science, the most up-to-date policy thinking and the real-world feedback from those who live with the consequences of inaction on protecting our environment. Deputy Speaker, this is something that people in my community in Jagajaga cares deeply about. I'm particularly lucky, as are members of my community, to live in one of Melbourne's most biodiverse regions. It's home to bushland, wetlands and parklands that are the lungs of our suburbs. Locals are passionate about the Yarra River, the Banyule Flats, the Warringal Parklands, the Darebin and Diamond Creeks, and these are all areas where volunteers and community have been working for decades to protect habitat, to restore native vegetation and preserve the wildlife that makes our area of Melbourne so special. I give a shout out to community groups like Friends of Edendale Farm, Friends of Yarra Flats Park, Darebin Creek Management Committee, Warringal Conservation Society, our local land care networks and many more who have regularly contacted me both about this bill and about the need for stronger national laws to protect nature. The people who are contacting me are concerned about declining biodiversity, the loss of tree canopy and the impact of urban expansion on local waterways and ecosystems. These are the people who get up on weekends to plant trees, to pick up rubbish and teach our kids about the importance of caring for country. Their passion and their stewardship reflect the best of our community, and their message to me has been clear. They want stronger, fairer and more effective environmental laws. Throughout the development of this bill, I've been proud to make sure that their voices have been part of the consideration that has gone into drafting. This bill does deliver clear standards, transparent decision-making and a federal EPA that can take action where breaches occur. It ensures that people who live alongside our natural areas, those who know them best, have confidence that they will be protected for the future. The bill is built on three key pillars: stronger environmental protection and restoration, more efficient and robust project assessments, and greater accountability and transparency in environmental decision-making. At its heart, this reform will create Australia's first independent national environmental protection agency, a tough science-based regulator to enforce one clear set of national rules. This will mean that when environmental harm occurs, there will be consequences, real ones. No more loopholes, no more shifting blame between levels of government. A genuine cop on the beat, with the authority to investigate, audit and stop harmful environmental activities before they do permanent damage. The need for these laws could not be clearer. Every day of delay in updating these laws is damaging our environment and costing business time and money. The average time it takes to approve a major project has more than doubled since 2004. Meanwhile, Australia's native species continue to decline at alarming rates, and habitat destruction remains one of the biggest drivers of biodiversity loss. Communities see developers fast-tracked while local concerns are sidelined. They see companies breach environmental conditions and face little or no consequence. And they have seen, for too long, governments, such as those from the other side, pass responsibility from one level to another while the environment pays the price. Our current system is fragmented, it's outdated, it is failing both the environment and business. So that is why this bill is so important: to modernise the Act, to streamline approvals, to bring consistency, transparency and accountability to a process that in too many cases has lost public trust. And in having a federal environmental protection agency, an independent national watchdog with strong powers, the agency will have the ability to audit state and territory approval processes, to issue stop work orders to halt damaging activity, to impose stronger penalties on repeat offenders and give communities a clear way to report breaches and see real action taken. The EPA will operate independently of political pressure. It will publish data on environmental outcomes, monitor compliance, and help ensure that environmental decisions are based on evidence, not influence. The bill also defines what constitutes unacceptable environmental impacts, so that projects causing irreversible damage cannot be approved. A new offsets regime will ensure that where environmental impacts cannot be avoided, developers must deliver measurable and lasting benefits elsewhere, achieving a net gain for nature rather than simply offsetting losses. Importantly, bioregional and regional planning will provide greater clarity for communities and investors alike. These plans will identify no-go zones, areas of critical habitat, high conservation value or cultural significance that must be protected, while guiding responsible development to areas where environmental impacts can be minimised. This approach balances protection and progress. It supports environmental certainty and investment and business confidence at the same time. Strong and clear boundaries, formal rules, no room for ambiguity. Our environment deserves nothing less. We have too many precious places, too many precious species that are still being lost in this country. It's on all of us in here to make sure that we do all we can to end that, and that means working together to pass these laws. Deputy Speaker, these rules will also improve efficiency. They will cut red tape for business by removing duplication between Commonwealth and state processes and creating clear, consistent national standards will save businesses time and money while improving outcomes for nature. The Productivity Commission estimates these reforms could deliver up to $7 billion in economic benefits through faster and more efficient approvals. That's a win for business, it's a win for workers, and it's a clear win for our environment. Deputy Speaker, this bill represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity. As I said, it reflects a commitment our government made to voters at the last election that we would get this done. We are very focused on restoring integrity to environmental decision-making. We want to strengthen protection for our most precious ecosystems. We want to ensure that those who damage the environment are held to account. We do all of that with this bill, but we are also conscious that we cannot do it alone. For these reforms to be successful, we will need support from the Liberals, or we will need support from the Greens political party. I say to the members of this parliament, this is our chance to do this once-in-a-generation reform, to halt the loss that we have seen, the loss of biodiversity, halt the loss of species, which is unacceptable, to work together to protect our environment. I started, Deputy Speaker, with a series of questions about the attitudes of those opposite and their commitment to this bill. Those questions remain, but as we debate the bill in this House, what we have before us is the opportunity for those opposite to answer them, and in fact to answer them positively for nature, to answer them positively for our environment, for generations to come, to answer them positively for business, for the work that needs to happen to continue to develop the infrastructure that our country needs. There is an opportunity here for our environment, for this parliament, to do the work that has been far too long in coming, to do the work that it takes Labor governments to do, to work through with passionate advocates who have continued to stand up for our environment and who have worked with us on a set of reforms that, while long overdue, I am confident will deliver real gains for our environment. As I said, it's now over to this parliament to do the necessary work to make sure that what's been in train for so long, ever since Graham Samuel started his review and is now being reflected in these laws, becomes a reality for our environment, for our country, and for the future of biodiversity in our country.